Of course, I was a science teacher before I started farming, so I got a background in it already, but it is fascinating. The more I learn, the more I want to learn.
Welcome to the 266th installment of Ear to the Ground, the Land Stewardship Project's podcast on family farming, regenerative agriculture, regional food systems, and local democracy. I'm Brian DeVore, editor of the Land Stewardship Letter. What do you know about making good compost? It turns out there's a whole lot more to it than mixing a pile of leaves and kitchen scraps together and letting it all rot into some sort of natural source of fertility. In fact, a major myth about compost is that it's just another form of fertilizer, a natural replacement for petroleum-based crop nutrients. Good, biologically active compost can be a way to jumpstart the soil's innate ability to build its own fertility. Such living compost adds beneficial microbes to the soil, much like a baker introduces yeast to bread dough, giving rise to a chain reaction of exciting ecological activity. But that kind of composting takes the right mix of organic material and enough time to allow fungal communities to develop. Traditional composting that's done on a farm level or commercial scale involves building big windrows of waste material and turning them regularly to let in oxygen and break things down as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, this speeded-up process creates a kind of compost that's immature and not as full of the complex fungal communities and other forms of life that can be so beneficial to plant growth. Inspired by the work of microbiologist Elaine Ingham, in recent years farmers and others have been investigating how they can use composting to build the kind of soil biome that's self-sustaining and not reliant on a constant supply of chemical inputs. For example, since the summer of 2021, the Land Stewardship Project has been working with a group of farmers to research if a particularly innovative, low-labor approach to breaking down waste material can be a critical linchpin in efforts to bring the soil back to life. Through this initiative, LSP staff members have erected Johnson Sioux bioreactors on 4 farms in southeastern Minnesota and 1 farm in western Wisconsin. Invented by molecular biologist David Johnson and his wife Hui-Chun Sioux, the bioreactor creates an inoculant that, when applied to soil, can jumpstart biological activity. The original recipe developed by Johnson and Sioux consists of 1/3 leaf litter, 1/3 dried cow manure, and 1/3 wood chips. But through this LSP project, which is being funded by a grant from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Growth, Research, and Innovation Program, farmers are experimenting with variations on the original recipe, utilizing chicken and hog manure, for example. Most of the research on the Johnson Sioux bioreactor system has focused in areas like New Mexico, and studies show material produced by this composting system greatly increases the soil's fungal biomass, which results in, among other things, greater crop yields and more sequestration of carbon. One of the goals of this LSP initiative is to see how this system performs under replicated trials in the harsh climate of the upper Midwest. From now until 2023, we'll be sampling the bioreactors and comparing composition and microbial makeup to the samples taken from 3 commercial composting facilities. After 18 months or so, the crop farmers participating in this trial will have material available to make a kind of tea extract that can then be applied to their own field soils. The vegetable producers participating in this research can also use the material as potting soil. It's at this point we'll learn just how effective and practical this system can be in areas like Minnesota and Wisconsin. One of the benefits of the Johnson Sioux bioreactor is that it is quite scalable. It can be set up in a backyard or on a large crop farm and can be constructed for under $50. Unlike large-scale windrow composting systems, it does not require a large compost turner or other specialty equipment, and very little labor is required once the systems get going. The bioreactor stacks LSP has set up on the 5 farms are constructed of wire mesh, fabric, and PVC piping. They're approximately 5 feet high and 12.5 feet around. During the summer of 2021, I had the opportunity to observe bioreactors being erected on the farms LSP is working with. After the composters were set up, I talked to a few of the farmers about why they were interested in this method of building soil health. First, LSP soil health organizer Barrett Eider provided me some background on this project.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of cover what the Johnson Sioux compost bioreactor is. It was designed by a husband and wife team, and they're based out of New Mexico. And so they came up with this idea, and essentially the bioreactor is set on about a 4x4 pallet. There's 6 holes that are drilled into it. to hold in PVC piping. And those PVCs will act as aerators. Those will come out after about 72 hours. And then around there, to hold in all the compost, there's a cage placed around it, kind of like a cattle panel, maybe about 4 feet across, 5 feet tall. And then you'll line the pallet and the cattle panel with landscape fabric to hold everything in. And then we'll fill it. The typical ratio for the Johnson Sioux composter is a third cattle manure, a third leaf litter, and a third wood chips. So that's kind of the original recipe. So what we're doing here is experimenting with different recipes. On Tom's farm here, we have 2 different recipes. Biggest difference between his 2 are going to be there's chicken manure in one and cattle manure in the other. And we've got about 6 ingredients in each. And trying to get that ratio just about right as the original recipe.
And so explain what it is that the product that will result and kind of the time period it'll take, and what's going to be occurring during that time period inside those containers there.
Yeah, so the first week or first couple weeks we'll be looking at the bioreactors will go into what's called a thermophilic phase. And that'll heat up to, don't quote me on this, I think it's about 140 degrees it has to heat for. That'll kill any pathogenic bad bugs, bad bacteria in there. And in that first week, we'd actually take out those pipes to allow that air space to come in. And then after the heating cycle, we're gonna, it'll just sit. We do have to keep the moisture about 70%. And then we'll add worms after that heating phase is over so the worms are safe. And then timeline on this, if it's in a semi-heated area over the winter time in our climate, it could take about 12 months. But if it does freeze up, which is fine, it can go about up to 18 months. Okay. And the project is 2.5 years. So again, if we'll set up another 2 bioreactors next year.
So at the end of that period, you have the stuff, and it sounds like you can do a couple things with it. One is you can make a tea that you apply, or you can apply it directly. Mm-hmm. When you apply it, what is it you're hoping it'll do for the soil, or what is it that it's going to activate there? Yeah,
so the product of these bioreactors is more of a biological, more than organic compost or organic material. Mm-hmm. You can use organic material for as a seed starting stuff for maybe more so on the vegetable side. Yeah, so you'll get the finished media out of this, and you can extract it as a tea. Well, yeah, extract or a tea. And then both of them are really good to put on in a spray application. Mm-hmm. And really, it's just a concentrated amount of microbes and fungus, and that'll really help the plants grow a lot better and gives them ability to actually pull nutrients easier by partnering with those soil microbes. So
I was talking to Tom a little bit about this, and he kind of put it in an interesting way. He said, in some ways, this is a way for him to get the biodiversity. We've discovered that by using, really diverse mixes of cover crops, diverse rotations, that kind of thing, we can really get the biology of the soil going. And part of that reason is beneath the ground is that you got a diversity of roots, and they are helping foster that real diverse biome type of situation. This is a way, maybe you can't put in a 12-way mix of cover crops or whatever. This is a way to get that diversity in the soil, it sounds like.
It'll certainly help, yep, but in the end, you do need the food out there for these microbes too. So they will need, you got to have something out there for them to be, some roots, living roots to latch onto. So that's probably, if you're putting it on in the fall, just onto corn stalks, it's probably not going to, it won't do much for you. But if it's going on to a cover cropped area or maybe some spring oats, that's going to be at least something for it to partner up with.
Something that it was developed in New Mexico. We're doing it here in Minnesota. Is this kind of unique to be trying something like this here?
I certainly think there's a lot of folks that are trying it in our climate region. It'll be, part of the project is seeing what happens in the winter and seeing if it freezes hard. I've heard that it can. Tom will be keeping it in his somewhat heated shed here, and some of the other farms will also be doing that. So we'll just have to see. I'm hoping it doesn't totally freeze solid, but I've heard it's fine. It's just got to pick. It's going to be a little bit slower to get going in the spring, but it's still promising.
Are you excited? See what happens?
I'm super excited. I'm mostly excited about the fact that this is a replicated trial and we get to see this over a 2.5 year period. So that's really the most exciting thing to me and the recipes. It's just kind of fun we don't know what is going to turn out, so we're just trying whatever we want to try. So
that's what I was struck by, was watching you guys mix this. You had wood chips, compost. Was it worm compost as well?
There's some worm compost.
Worm compost, and then cow manure, and then the other recipe included chicken manure. It was really interesting to see that. It was like a kitchen recipe kind of thing, and it is kind of fun to see the differences in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just didn't know we knew what we were putting in there, but coming out here, it was kind of had to figure out the ratios once we got out here. So
just one last thing. You mentioned it's a replicated trial, so maybe give us a general overview. This is on how many farms it's on and the different kinds of farms that are going to be represented in the trial.
Yeah, so Tom has cattle and row crops out here, and then he's got a lot of pasture. He's got organic and conventional ground, and then we're going to Wazupi Tribal Gardens. They're vegetable production. Good Turn Farm is also vegetable production, and then Pangracs are dairy. Yep, and then John Jovog, they've got livestock as well. They've got a mixed livestock.
And I believe the Jovogs are organic as well.
Yes, they are. Yep, and they've got hogs, sheep, and they just got a few cattle in as well. So and row crops.
So that's a good mix. We've got vegetable operations, a dairy operation, and then some kind of diversified crop livestock operations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that'll be a really nice mix, and then once we get the results from the project, that I think it'll be transferable to a lot of different operations. So that'll be nice to see.
Next, I talked to Southern Minnesota crop and livestock farmer Tom Cotter about how he's hoping the Johnson Sioux system will help him up his soil health game. Could you just give a quick rundown of your farm? How many acres you're farming here, and what enterprises you have?
Right now, about 850 acres. Corn, soybeans, sweet corn, peas. I do have oats this year, organic oats. A third of my acres are in organic, and then the rest is conventional, which is all strictly no-till and cover. And I try and perfect the stuff in that to bring it over to organic, but in the organic world, I'm still having to do some tillage, but try not to do too much.
Well, and with the organic transition and some of the things you're trying to do, I take it that soil health is really key piece of that.
Yeah, when I first started organic, I just used alfalfa fields to transition. Of course, when you're done, the ground's pretty hard, and so now when I transition, it's actually large multi-species and put the cattle out there grazing to put nutrients back into soil and get that as fresh as possible. So when I do have to do something, for cash crop time, it's not extreme tillage.
So you're already seeing some benefits from building that soil health with the no-till, the cover crops, and the grazing, and the diverse rotation.
Yeah. I really, when I first started doing covers, it was great. You got the smell. You saw soil life start coming, but once you started putting livestock in, then the livestock underground really started exploring. Then I saw even, 3 to 4 times the worm population as compared to just covers and no-till. So.
Well, so you're taking another big step here, which is utilizing this Johnson Sioux bioreactor. Tell me a little bit about why you feel like you had to maybe up your game a little bit, or you're interested in experimenting. You're upping your game a little bit with this particular system. What is it about that you feel will help you kind of take those further steps with soil health?
Well, I've always thought about trying to sustain myself without having to do too much outside inputs. And of course, this just falls right in line with the organic world, trying to get me nutrients without relying on anything else synthetic. Especially now with COVID, it seems like every day I hear there's a shortage of this, a shortage of that. And, realistically, there is before this even happened, we knew there was going to be a shortage of fertilizer coming in the near future. Well, now it's probably even exaggerated even more because of COVID. But, even without COVID, still doing it. But now it's just like, it makes me feel good to know that, okay, I got livestock manure, I'm doing that, and I just want to have that little extra.
Is there something that, as you've kind of built your soil health over the years, that you're like, I'm kind of missing something, and maybe you feel like this could help kind of fill some gaps there a little bit that you're looking for?
Yeah, because I'm always trying to do things as natural as possible. Because I don't want that plant to rely on a synthetic, input, and this is going to give me an input that's not synthetic, that it's natural. And it doesn't really matter how much I do. All the tillage has been done over the last 140 years, all the chemical and all the synthetic fertilizers that have been used. So it sets me back way more than I could ever really think. I mean, we all think that, it's just peachy keen and it works just fine. Well, no, it's always hurting this one little thing there, and another little thing there, and those 100 little things add up to a big thing. So I'm hoping this is going to help me take another step towards, getting out of the ground sooner, or maybe helping fight off a disease later on, or nutrients that maybe I was not capturing that I could still capture now.
What have you heard about the bioreactor? Like, what have you heard how other people are using it? Or, I mean, what have you heard so far about it?
I will say there is no silver bullet, so am I going to do this and think that all my troubles are gone? Absolutely not. I know that's just another tool that I have that I'm going to try and use, and if I can put enough of these small benefits together, it's going to help me in the long run.
And I guess we should make clear, this is not just composting some cow manure and some other materials. You're creating something that's actually going to help activate the biology in the soil. That's kind of what you're looking at with your goal with this.
Well, I've always felt, for years I did just cereal rye grain, and it was great, but in the end I kept thinking, well, this is just like a monocrop. And so then we went to 17 waste species and 30 waste species, and I really love that, but this is going to help me speed that up because I can't get 30 waste species on every field. Whereas this is probably going to give me the biology of, I have no idea, 40, 50 species, like every cover crop has different microbes that it benefits. Well, 30 helps me benefit those. This, could be is on a whole new level. So I'm excited. And I really don't think we even know what the possibility is out there because we've damaged the soil so much over the years, which, we did what we thought we were doing right, but we just don't know.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, that this is a way of providing that biodiversity that maybe you can't, it's not easy to do with, like you said, a huge mix of cover crops or whatever, but this is a way to, because what the benefits of those highly diverse mix of cover crops is developing diversity in the soil, but this is a way to kind of maybe short circuit that a little bit.
Yeah, not every farmer raises small grains or canning crops, so they don't have that option, or they don't have livestock, which brings a ton of microbes too. This is going to help that other side that most people can't do. So, but this is actually, it was great to have all of us here working this morning. We put it together in 4 or 5 hours. So I'm excited. But
so it could be 4 or 5 hours of investment and maybe years of biology, good healthy biology.
Oh man. Well, I hope it steps me back about 200 years to when biology was really healthy.
Organic dairy farmer Dale Pangrac is excited about the potential the Johnson Sioux bioreactor holds for building healthy soil on his southeastern Minnesota operation. And as a former science teacher, observing the actual biological process involved is just plain fun to watch.
We moved here in 1979. My wife and I were teachers up in Orono before we moved down here. We started farming conventionally, and we did that until 2005 when we transitioned to organic. Since then, my daughter and son-in-law have come in and joined the operation. We started out with 40 cows and 117 acres, and now we've got 150 cows and almost 900 acres. So we're raising our own feed, and then we're also selling organic corn and organic soybeans.
With that kind of, particularly because you're organic, I would assume soil health plays a really big role. Or did you become aware of that as you started transitioning into organic, how important soil health was, or was there something that made you aware of that?
Yeah, I did realize it early on, but didn't really know what to do about it. Then I heard Elaine Ingham speak, and since then we've been following that path. There's been a lot of things that we've tried that have worked, and a lot that didn't work. But yes, soil health is really important.
Yeah. And what's some of the things you've done to try to build that soil health over the years?
Well, we've done cover cropping. We use manure from the dairy and recycle that through the soil. We also graze our herd, so we pasture. We have a lot of pastures. We've had our organic matters go from like 1.8 up to, we've got some pastures at 8, over 8 now. So that we made a dramatic improvement, and now this year it's been off and on dry and wet, and even during those dry periods, the pastures have really been resilient.
Yeah, we're just coming off a really hot, unusually hot dry period for so early in the summer, and you've gotten some rain recently, but stuff around here looks really good from what I can tell.
Yes, it does.
It sounds like you have had some success with building soil health, and you got interested in this Johnson Sioux bioreactor. What is it that you've heard about that, or what is it that caught your interest that you feel like maybe there's some holes in your soil health building that you'd like to fill with that, or what do you think it would help satisfy there?
Well, what I'm hoping to do is get away from purchased fertilizer. That's the ultimate goal. In the meantime, we've had to use it because we've had some failures with it. Our compost didn't turn out the way it should. But now the way David Johnson does it is he's got a lot of different species of microorganisms and real high counts. So that's what we're after with these bioreactors.
Yeah, and I think that's something we need to make clear is this is, when people think of composting, they're thinking that that in this case, it's a form of just fertilizer, but it's really not, is it? It's kind of active. It's activating the natural fertility. Is that kind of the way it's the idea behind it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. The microbes do all the work. They'll release the fertilizer. Elaine says there's enough fertility in the ground for thousands of years, without putting any additional fertilizer on. And we're running short of the fertilizers. The mine fertilizers are going to be gone in years to come. But yes, the microorganisms make available to the plant what they actually need when they need it. The timing is perfect with that. Quorum sensing is another interesting concept, and I've been studying that.
What core sensing? What's that? Quorum sensing. What's that?
Well, the microorganisms themselves, the microbes, communicate with each other. And let's say the plant needs phosphorus today. It'll build up the populations of those microorganisms that release phosphorus from the soil and give it to it when the plant needs it. They can also, if it needs boron 4 hours from now, it'll release the boron. It'll build up the microorganism populations that will release that. So it's a fascinating study, and I've heard some talks on it, but it's still kind of over my head. But I like the concept.
Well, that's a really interesting concept, because one of the problems that we run into with purchased fertilizer that's applied is two things. One is the timing of when the plant needs it and the timing of when you apply it often don't jibe. Yeah. And so then we have a lot of it wasted. It gets run off and ends up being pollution and nitrates in drinking water, that kind of thing. But the plants, the other issue is the plants aren't getting what they need when they need it. So that timing, if you can get that timing, that seems like the real brass ring there.
Yeah, it is. And that, how do we know? It's between the plant, the plant and the microorganisms communicate with each other. They supply what each other needs. The plant feeds the microorganisms, and in turn, the microorganisms bring nutrients to the plant. So it's quite a system God created.
Yeah. So give us a rundown of what we have. And we have 2 bioreactors set up. What all do we have in these? What's the recipe for these?
The recipe in the first one is barley straw and hay and manure. And I also have a compost bedded pack that the cows are on, which consists of sawdust, and then we aerate it every day as the cows are on it. So it's manure and sawdust mixed. And the second one was compost from the bedded pack, some forest soil, manure, and corn stalks.
And then I think red worms will be added later, it sounds like.
They'll be added after the thermophilic phase.
Okay.
Yep.
It's for a farm like you, this maybe could be an ideal setup because you do have the material. You have livestock, so you have the manure, you have a bedding pack.
We also treat the manure with biological product that neutralizes the salts that are in it, and it also adds microbes to the manure. We get more nitrogen out of it than if we wouldn't treat it with that.
Oh, okay. Wow. So yeah, you really are set up as a dairy here where you're raising your own, you need that fertility, and you have your pasture that you like to build fertility in that, but you also have the livestock to provide that source material and kind of close that nutrient cycle a little bit.
Whole cycle, yeah.
And you have 2 Johnson Sioux bioreactors, kind of smaller ones that you've already experimented with, and you said you've looked at those, and those are 2 years old now, and I've noticed they're broken down to about half the original stack length. And you said you've looked at those, and it sounds like they're pretty active. There's some pretty active life in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of biodiversity in there. They're dry now. I've kept them inside and I haven't watered them, so they've gone dormant. But when I take a sample out and I hydrate it, I have to let it sit about a week, and then it becomes pretty active. I've got nematodes, and I got everything in there.
And I think you explained that. So those 2, maybe between them, you'd be able to treat. Did you say 200 acres? I can't remember how many. 400 acres.
400 acres.
Yeah, and so explain how that might work from here on out. Like if you were going to treat those, what would you be doing and in what way would you be applying that to the field?
Well, I'd take it out of the bioreactor, and I have a compost brewer that I made, and I have a bag on it, and I'll put it in the bag and then fill it with water, and then it just aerates. And if I need to add any extra food for the microbes, I can do that. Then when it's done, I'll put it in my sprayer, and I'll probably dilute it with some water and then spray it on the crop. Okay. Either in the morning early or in the evening when the stomata are open.
Right. Yeah, that's that whole idea of activating that biology in there, yep. That kind of thing. So it's pretty concentrated.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yeah.
I get the sense that you're very interested in doing this because you want to fill some of those gaps in your soil health goals, but it sounds like you're kind of excited about researching this, and from what you got excited by talking to Elaine Ingham, and that this is just maybe kind of fun to be a farmer scientist a little bit.
Well, it is, and of course I was a science teacher before I started farming, so I kind of background in it already, but it is fascinating. The more I learn, the more I want to learn.
For more on the Johnson Sioux bioreactor, see the links on the podcast page for Ear to the Ground episode 266 at landstewardshipproject.org. While there, check out our slideshow showing bioreactors being set up on LSP member farms during the summer of 2021. If you have comments or suggestions about this podcast, contact Brian DeVore at bdevore@landstewardshipproject.org, or you can call 612-816-9342. By the way, it helps us greatly if you can give Ear to the Ground a rating on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you utilize. Thanks to Laura Borgendale, a Western Minnesota musician, for Ear to the Ground's theme music, and a special thank you to all of Land Stewardship Project's members who make initiatives such as this podcast possible. If you're not a member, visit landstewardshipproject.org to learn how you can support LSP. Thanks for listening.